Hi friends, welcome back. As promised, today we're looking at this new painting that I'm working on that, if I'm being perfectly honest, I totally messed up what I had planned for the sky, but it turned into something really fun, and I think this is going to be a super fun painting for us to document because never really worked like this before, and I'm loving how it's coming out. So sit back, relax, and I'll show you how I screwed up and how I'm fixing it. So, we start very simply with some lovely blue. I actually spent a lot of time figuring out what I wanted for what reference photos I was going to use would be the better way of putting it. It took me, honestly, a lot longer than usual to figure that out, but the one that I was looking at had this really pretty pale blue sky with like these layered clouds where there's white in the farthest back, but then it moves up into like pinks and yellows. And I really wanted to see if I could make something like that happen. And I also keep seeing people using a kitchen sponge while they're painting, and I thought I would try it. It works really nicely for covering the canvas quickly, so I do think that that'll be something that I end up employing a little more often, at least when I'm doing my base coats like this. But that's not where the problem came in. It's coming though. You'll see it. Well, you'll see the end result, really. We'll get there. Anyway, so I wanted to start by putting some paint down and then really going in with oil pastels. Again, I am trying really hard to focus on doing more with oil pastels this year. I've had a lot of fun with them in the past. For some reason, I kind of stopped messing with them toward the latter half of last year, and then when this year started, I was kind of recognizing that I was back into a little bit of a rut, and the oil pastels were really the thing that had gotten me out of that to begin with. So my plan with this painting was to go heavy on the oil pastels, and boy do I. So like you saw, I went in with white paint first, and then I am using a couple of different pink oil pastels to add some color and texture into those clouds. And then I am using a little smudge stick to smudge it. I know I've talked about this before, but the smudge sticks are a lot easier on my hand than trying to use my fingers for oil pastels. I just really like the smudge sticks. I also think you get a little bit more precision with a smudge stick than you do with your fingers, so that's just how I do it. But as I am going on this first layer of pink with the oil pastels, I'm immediately recognizing that it doesn't match the vibe that I got from the reference photo, and I'm not loving the cloud shape that I've ended up with. They're fine, but just not what I was going for. So I just keep working it. I keep adding more pink pastels and then going back in with the smudge stick, adding some white pastels and going back in with the smudge stick, adding a different shade of pink or some peach and going back in with the smudge stick. And this entire time, I'm talking on the phone. And in the past, I have been very successful at talking on the phone and painting. I can't talk on the phone and write. I can't talk on the phone and do a whole lot of other things, but usually I can talk on the phone and paint. This was not one of those times. So I was recognizing that The colors weren't coming out exactly the way that I wanted. The shapes weren't coming out exactly the way that I wanted. But I was in the middle of a conversation and I wasn't paying attention to what I was doing or how it was looking, honestly. I think I just kept going, well, if I add more color, maybe it'll get better. Because again, my reference photo had a lot of different colors. It had a lot of different, very pastel tonality. It's a very pretty reference photo that I'm using for specifically this guy. And I just kept working the colors and thinking, eventually I'll get enough color down on this canvas that it'll work. Except that at some point, and I think here you can kind of see it starting, I have started to put too much color down and it's just not working at all. And I do feel bad about this part. It got worse. It got a lot worse. But I didn't realize that my camera was not actually rolling during that portion. So you'll really just see how bad it got with the pinks. And there will be one flash of just a few seconds where you can see just how bad and rainbowy this painting got. But I was so distracted and I wasn't liking how it was looking. And for some reason in my head, that equated to let's just throw more color on this thing and see what happens, which is not my normal technique. I don't know how that happened or where that came from. But after a little while, I looked at it and it was a psychedelic rainbow mess. And I got off the phone and I just sat down and I looked at what I had done. And I honestly wasn't sure how I could fix this or how I could do anything that would remotely make it better. Because I have done a decent amount with oil pastels and gouache. And I know that if I paint over this, the paint isn't going to stick as well as it should. So, because there's obviously oil paint, and then I'm going to put acrylic on top of oil paint, that doesn't work. You can put oil paint on top of acrylic, but you can't put acrylic on top of oil paint. They work in one direction and not the other. And then it occurred to me that I had workable fixative, which is kind of like varnish, only not. Here's where you can see how psychedelic it got. So I sprayed the whole section with workable fixative, which basically just fixes the pastels to their place on the canvas, but keeps it a little bit workable. So if I wanted to go back in and do some more smudging, I could. But what I actually did is I got some very watered down white gouache. And what you're seeing here is me adding a wash of very, very light, very watered down white paint. And I did not think that this was going to come out all that pretty. My original intention was that I would put this white down and then I would probably end up just putting a different color on top of it. Maybe I would just totally start over. Wasn't super sure. But once I really started to get this white wash down on top of the insanity that was all of that oil pastel, this coloration looks a lot like a New Mexico sunrise or sunset. It has this quality of having like a rainbow of light behind a very light film of clouds. It turned out super, super pretty. And The more that I look at this, honestly, the more I love this happy little accident. It feels kind of like a very Bob Ross thing where I'm like, well, there's a happy accident. But I have never had it come out this much like a happy accident. I am really excited with how pretty the sky looks in this painting. And you'll see me work it a lot throughout this video. Here I'm going to go in with some white paint. Now that the layer that I'm painting onto is paint, I can put paint down without worrying about it coming back up from being on the pastels, especially with having that layer of fixative in there. I don't really have the concern of this isn't gonna stick. This might just be fugitive and fall off. I've had zero issues with it. I've worked it a little bit more since filming this video, and it's just coming out really nicely, and I think I'm gonna end up using that fixative a lot more often now. But so I go in with some pink clouds because now I'm going off of my reference photo and then honestly my memories of some of the sunrise and sunsets that I had seen as a kid, and I absolutely adore the way that these colors are working together. Having that just rainbow of various shades behind these pink clouds is just really pretty and really different. And I honestly love how just the wash of white paint turned out over the top of that, to the point that it's a thing that I'm going to play with on this whole painting. I'm going to play with using a little bit too much color with the oil pastels, using fixative, and then doing a wash of gouache and kind of pulling it back from there. So you'll see me do that technique a couple more times while I'm working on this painting. Yeah, and it's a really interesting technique that would never have occurred to me if I hadn't royally screwed up here. So now, as you can see, I am working on a mountain that's going to go in the front. The mountain I have pretty much landed on. I'm just going to paint it in this dark purpley gray, and then I will be, and you'll see this in the video, I will be at some point filling it in with oil pastel, but I'm not going to do that same thing where I'm going to put a wash of paint over it. I actually think I can get the texture and the color and the feel that I want with just the oil pastels. So I'm not going to be putting another layer of gouache. But then here, this section is going to be it's a hill essentially, and the shape will make sense at some point, I promise. My reference photo is funky and I'm trying to follow a reference photo. So just bear with the weird shape that I'm painting. And so I'm going to put oil pastels in varying shades of greens with a couple of different teals and blues into this whole dark green section. I know it kind of looks closer to black, but it is a deep cypress green. And so I'm going to do a similar technique to what I did on the sky. I am going to layer on just a bunch of different colors of pastels, and then we'll see about doing a wash on it later in this video. But here you can see I am starting on the oil pastels that will kind of highlight and low light the mountain in the back. So I have another painting that I did a few years ago now, I think. I don't remember exactly what year I did it. It was probably 22 or 23, so it's been a few years, that has this really pretty purple mountain in the background, and then the painting moves forward into greens. And I have that painting hung up in my living room, and I look at it a lot, obviously, because it's in my living room. And the other day I was looking at it and thinking I should do more purple mountains. And honestly, that's where this mountain was born, was just me looking at the other mountain that I painted and recognizing that I enjoyed that purple mountain and I should do more purple mountains. I am kind of trying to look at some of the older pieces that I have done and seeing if I can do something in similar colors or with a similar feel, something that gives me that same vibe as whatever painting I did before that I really like. I think it's just kind of a fun way for me to experiment and see how my art has grown over time, is to just make a new purple mountain in the background and see which one I end up liking better. Hint, it's this one. But it's just a really fun, it's a fun thing to do. If you are an artist, I highly recommend like looking through some of your old work, finding one that is one of your favorites, and then seeing if you could do it again if it came out better. It's a thing I've done with writing as well, where I've written a short story, given it a few years, and then rewritten the same short story, and it's a really fun exercise. It's also a really fun way to really see how much your craft has changed and how much you've learned over the years. So if you are a creative person, it's a thing that I would recommend doing. It's also just really fun, and it's kind of a challenge to see if you can make something that you like just as much or more than the original. Because sometimes you don't. Sometimes you make a new thing and it's technically better, or it's technically more quote unquote sound, but it doesn't give you that same warm fuzzy feeling as the original. And I don't know, I just think that it's kind of, it's a fun thing to do, and it's a fun thing to be able to share with people and show them like, this was the original, this is what was going on when I did this one, and I absolutely loved it, and I had so much fun doing all these things. These are the new things I did in this painting, and then this is my redoing it, and see which one other people like better, because sometimes that also gives you some good insight into your craft and how you've grown as a person and as a creative over time. I just think it's fun. I think as long as you have grown at least that little bit of a spine, it is really fun to kind of poke fun at some of your old work and get to shine a light on your new stuff. So here, what I've been doing for a minute, again, is going in with that smudge stick, and I'm starting with the mountain. I love how fast my hand moves at 3 times speed. It's just whee! But, so I'm going to smudge in all of those oil pastels, and I just love how the colors in this purple mountain came out with just using the oil pastels. And again, that's why I had no intention of going in with a gouache over the top. I was pretty sure that I could get a look at least similar to this with just using oil pastels. This is very much one of those videos where I feel like it's a lot of just me smudging stuff on a canvas and talking at you, but also I think it's really fun to get to see just all that oil pastels can do, really, because they do some really interesting stuff. They move in a way that's very different to paint, but in a really fun way and a really interesting way. So I really enjoy, I like watching back these videos and seeing kind of from start to finish what all went down with my painting. That's another thing that I really recommend if you are an artist. Like, film yourself while you're making your craft. Even if you're not going to do a YouTube channel or you're not going to put them online ever and they're just for you, it's really fun to get to see from start to finish, like almost in like a third person view, what it looks like while you're painting and what your painting looks like from start to finish. because a lot of times you don't always necessarily like step back and really look at it because you're so in the middle of it and you're so focused on one little bit at a time that you just don't necessarily see all the little things. And I just think it's fun to get to see every single little step that you go through while you're working on a painting. So here the white splotches on the canvas are getting to me, so I've decided to take a break from the oil pastels, and I very much should have put some fixative between these layers, but I'm hoping that with some fixative over the top, it'll just be fine and behave. I think that it will. Again, my whole thing is it's just an experiment. I'm really just, with the oil pastels and the gouache, I've seen some tutorials on how to work with these two together, but it's been a lot more fun to just play with it and see what happens. And if I have another oops or another problem, then that's just another thing for me to figure out how to fix and figure out how to overcome. So I'm trying to not put too much stock in the fact that there might be issues, and that's fine. If there are issues, I will find a way to fix them, because that's what we do as creatives. Sometimes problems arise and we find a way to work around them. So, like I said earlier, I did step back and really look at the sky, and I wanted my clouds to be kind of pinker and more vivid. I will probably put a few more layers onto the clouds. I might add a little bit of yellow and some more whites into there just to make them just a little bit more vivid. But so here I'm just taking some time with a little filbert brush and some magenta, and I'm just kind of patting it in and rubbing it in and trying to make them look a little bit more cloudy and a little bit less messy. I had done them very smudgy when I did them originally, and there were a couple of spots that were really bothering me because they were too smudgy and it looked too much like paint and too little like a cloud. So I had been looking at it while I was doing the green oil pastels, and I just kept thinking, I need to fix those clouds. I really need to go fix those clouds. But I am, again, kind of trying to go back and forth on this one so that I'm not so focused on one part of the canvas at a time. So I love how the mountains look, and I'm probably not going to, the purple mountains, I should clarify. I love how the purple mountains look. I'm probably not going to do very much to them from here on out. I might add a little bit more highlight once I've figured out a couple of other things, but in general, those mountains are going to stay about how they look right now. But I do want to be able to, if there is a thing that I feel like I need to go back and adjust, I want to be able to actually go back and adjust that without feeling like I can't, because I already quote unquote finished that section, which is because I tend to work from the background to the foreground. I can get this feeling in my little creative noggin that, well, I already finished that part, I can't go back and fix it. So sometimes I do have to really remind myself that I can go back and fix it. And I know this is the thing I've talked about in videos before, but this was one of those where I liked how the sky looked. I was really happy with that white wash over the oil pastels, and I knew even when I originally painted the purple mountains on, I knew that I wasn't in love with the clouds and that I was going to want to go in and change them at least a little bit. So I was aware, at least, that that was something I was going to have to go back in and fix. But at that point, when I first put in the purple mountain, I was at my wit's end with the sky, and I did not want to work on it anymore. Fun fact, At this point in the video, I'm sitting because Jester Bun is sitting behind the easel, and she was super nervous because I had been standing the whole time that I was working on this canvas, and I never stand when I'm in my office. I sit at the easel and I paint. So normally when she comes in my office, she runs around, she gets the zoomies, she's all happy. And this particular day when I was in my office, because I was just standing and smudging paint and pastels, she just sat behind the easel and stared at me with this look on her face like, Mom, what is wrong, Mom? And so eventually I was like, oh, okay. And I sat down. As soon as I sat down, she was fine. Totally fine. She just wanted me to be sitting. Apparently, I'm not allowed to stand while I'm painting. Who knew? So again, I added more oil pastels to this green mountain, and again, spending a lot more time smudging those colors in. There were a few sections that I didn't love how the colors had blended, so I wanted to go in and get that fixed. The funny thing is I am going to put a wash of paint over this whole section, and for some reason I had it in my head that I needed to have the colors exactly how I wanted them for the oil pastels before I could move on. I think somehow I just got in an oil pastel zone, and I was like, I'm going to make this work. I'm going to make it just be oil pastels. It's going to be so pretty being oil pastels. Probably because the purple mountain was just going to stay oil pastels. So, I don't know. I do actually, looking back at the video, I do really like how the oil pastel looks, the green. But I have some ideas for what I'm going to do with this section of the canvas, and it will be better after I've done the gouache wash. Also, a gouache wash is just a really fun thing to say. Gouache wash. Gouache wash. So, smudge stick to the rescue. See, I'm telling you, this whole video is just me smudging oil pastels into a canvas. And yet, somehow, it's interesting and it's fun. At least I hope it's interesting and fun. I think it's interesting and fun. Anyway, so I have a couple of different smudge sticks I can use, but in this section I actually have an oil pastel stick in one hand and a smudge stick in the other, and I'm just kind of filling in a few little holes that just didn't get as much oil pastel as I would have liked, and getting it to where it looks how I want it. Which is, again, funny because I'm about to put a wash of paint over it, but I think it was worth it. I think taking the time to get these colors closer to where I wanted them is going to end up being really good for me in the future. So then here, as I said, I am just taking a very watered down Viridian green, and I'm going to do just a very light wash of Viridian green over the entire bottom of the canvas. So all the way from that green mountain down to the bottom is going to be this very light Viridian green. And that is going to be all that I'm going to show you in this video, because honestly, I haven't hardly made it much further on the painting. But I hope that you guys have enjoyed this, and I really can't wait to see what this canvas becomes from here. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope that you have enjoyed this, and I will see you guys in a couple weeks with a brand new video. Bye! Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more chill videos with art.